Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a topic that, well, it can get pretty sensitive, especially around things like family gatherings. You know those pictures, right? Everyone's smiling.
Mm-hmm. The perfect holiday card image.
Exactly. But for a lot of people, those times, they're actually filled with stress, maybe anxiety, sometimes even real sadness. So let me just ask you, have you ever walked away from being with family and just felt, I don't know, drained or defeated or just kind of bad about
That
yourself?
feeling is surprisingly common, unfortunately.
It really is. And if that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. So our focus today is getting into what toxic parenting really means, not just, occasional mistakes, but the real deal and how its effects can stretch way, way into adulthood.
And it's important to say this isn't about assigning blame. It's about getting clarity, understanding patterns.
Right? Clarity and self-protection.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to give you the knowledge to spot these patterns, really understand their impact, and crucially, find some actual strategies for coping and starting to heal. We've looked at a whole range of sources, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, therapy guides, even discussions on places like Reddit.
Yeah, those community discussions offer some really raw, powerful insights alongside the clinical perspectives. It gives a pretty well-rounded view.
Okay, so let's dive in. We all know parents aren't perfect, right? Everyone makes mistakes. But what tips the scale from, normal human flaws to behavior that's genuinely toxic?
That's the core question, isn't it? A toxic parent's behavior isn't just about isolated screw-ups. It's a consistent pattern. It creates this unhealthy, often really harmful environment where the basic needs for love, support, and importantly, healthy boundaries just aren't met.
A consistent pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's fascinating and also kind of tricky is how subtle some of these things can be. They're hard to recognize sometimes, even for the person experiencing it, especially as a child. And this can apply to any parental figure, really, biological, step-parent, adoptive, foster.
That makes sense. It's like a slow erosion rather than one big explosion. So if we're looking for these patterns, what are some of the main characteristics? Or maybe like the tactics they use?
Well, a big one often is overt control and fear-based tactics. You see parents getting way too involved in their child's life, almost suffocating their independence.
Micromanaging everything.
Exactly. And then overreacting, sometimes aggressively if their authority gets challenged. This goes way beyond normal discipline. We're talking about things like hitting a child for not doing chores or really belittling them for a bad grade.
That's not teaching. That's
Yeah.
different.
It's about control.
Mhm.
It creates this environment built on fear. And that's where healthy discipline just completely crosses the line into punishment that's severe, even dangerous, emotionally or physically.
Wow. Yeah, I can see how that would just condition you to walk on eggshells constantly.
Oh.
And then you mentioned subtle things too. What about the manipulation side?
Ah, yes. Subtle manipulation and emotional games are very common. They might use flattery 1 minute, then guilt tripping the next to get what they want. And often they genuinely seem to think this is just how relationships work. It feels normal to them.
Normalizing manipulation.
Pretty much. And a really insidious form of this is gaslighting, where they deny things happened or insist you remembered wrong or twist events until you're left feeling totally confused, doubting your own memory, your own reality.
Making you question yourself constantly.
Exactly. It's incredibly disorienting. Another tactic is playing the victim. They might consistently portray themselves as the victim in situations, blaming everyone else for their problems, and somehow managing to turn things around so you end up feeling guilty or responsible.
Right, like it's always someone else's fault, maybe even yours.
Precisely. As someone on Reddit pointed out, they might resist any change because, in their mind, they're right, and that's what serves their needs. There's no incentive to see it differently.
It's like they're actively rewriting reality. And that seems tied into boundaries, or maybe the lack of them.
Absolutely. That's a huge theme. Blurred boundaries and identity erosion. This shows up in so many ways. Maybe excessive phone calls, dropping by unannounced constantly, even trying to befriend your friends or partners to kind of intrude further.
Crossing lines all the time.
All the time. It's a constant encroachment. And then there's oversharing, discussing really inappropriate adult topics with their kids, blurring that parent-child line. This can lead to something called parentification.
Parentification. What's that exactly?
It's where the child starts feeling responsible for the parent's emotional needs, like they have to be the caretaker. This often deepens into enmeshment.
Okay, enmeshment. I've heard that term.
Yeah, enmeshment is where the boundaries are almost entirely gone. The parent treats the child like an extension of themselves, not a separate person. They might make decisions for you, expect you to meet their emotional needs. It makes it incredibly difficult to develop your own healthy sense of self, your own identity.
So if you do try to express yourself or show an emotion they don't like, what happens then?
Often you're met with invalidation of feelings. They might just dismiss your concerns out of hand, interrupt you constantly, or even scold you for feeling a certain way. They might tell you how you should feel instead.
Like your feelings are wrong.
Exactly. There was an example from Healthline, a father dismissing his child's pain about an abusive relative, saying something like, "Oh, haven't you forgotten about that yet? It was ages ago." It sends such a damaging message. Your feelings don't count. Your reality is invalid.
That's brutal.
It is. And the core thing to grasp here is how these behaviors, often so subtle, just chip away year after year at a person's self-worth. It makes it incredibly hard to see the situation clearly or to believe you deserve better. This stuff digs deep and lasts a long, long time.
Yeah, that really sets up this next part perfectly, because this is where it often gets really painful to look at. We're talking about the long-term fallout, how growing up with toxic parents actually impacts adults often decades later. It's not just bad memories, it shapes who you become.
It really does lay a foundation, often a shaky or damaged one.
So let's start with mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
If you're constantly criticized, put down,
Mm.
that has to mess with your internal monologue, right? Your self-esteem.
Oh, absolutely. Constant criticism, constant invalidation, it leads directly to deep-seated low self-esteem and this really pervasive negative self-talk. You basically internalize all those critical voices.
Like you have your parents' critical voice living inside your head.
Exactly. It becomes your own inner critic, constantly undermining your confidence, telling you you're not good enough. And research consistently links this kind of upbringing to higher rates of anxiety and depression, both in childhood and carrying on into adulthood. Sources like choosingtherapy.com highlight this connection.
And if your feelings were always dismissed or punished, how do you even learn to handle emotions in a healthy way?
That's a huge challenge. It leads to what we call emotional dysregulation. Because your feelings were never validated, maybe even punished, you don't develop the skills to manage them effectively.
So what does that look like?
It can manifest in different ways. Maybe frequent emotional outbursts because you just can't contain it anymore. Or the opposite, emotional numbness, where you just feel kind of disconnected from your feelings because it wasn't safe to feel them. And this often fuels deep feelings of shame.
Shame, like feeling fundamentally flawed.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly that. A core belief that there's something inherently wrong with you, that you're not worthy. It's a really profound wound that toxic parenting can inflict.
Wow. And you see these internal struggles play out in relationships too, I imagine.
Definitely. Relationship challenges are really common. A major one is boundary issues. If your boundaries were constantly trampled on growing up, it's incredibly hard to learn how to set and maintain healthy ones as an adult.
So you might overshare or let people walk all over you.
Right. It can lead to patterns like codependency, where you're always prioritizing others' needs, trying to please everyone to avoid conflict, or sometimes the opposite, isolation, because letting people close feels too risky, too vulnerable. And this ties into attachment problems.
Detachment, like how you connect with people.
Exactly. Growing up in that kind of environment makes it really hard to form secure, trusting attachments. You might struggle with intimacy, find it difficult to truly trust partners or friends because your earliest relationships taught you that connection isn't safe or that love is conditional.
It just rewires your expectations of relationships.
It really does. It sets a difficult template.
Okay, so we've got the mental, emotional, relational impacts.
Right.
Are there physical effects too? Or behavioral ones?
Yes, there can be. The sheer chronic stress of that kind of upbringing can take a physical toll. We see links to things like gastrointestinal problems, chronic headaches, even a weakened immune system. Your body keeps the score, essentially.
Stress literally making you sick.
It can, absolutely. And behaviorally, some people turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like substance abuse, using drugs or alcohol to try and numb the pain or escape the feelings. And in really severe cases where the abuse or neglect was profound, it can lead to PTSD or complex PTSD.
PTSD.
Yeah, with symptoms like flashbacks, nightmares, intense emotional distress triggered by reminders of the trauma. It's serious.
So connecting all these dots,
Yeah.
it really highlights how those early experiences basically build your sense of self-worth, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. If that foundation is built on criticism, invalidation, or abuse, you internalize this belief that you're just not worthy of love or respect. And that belief is incredibly powerful and hard to shake, even when you're an adult and technically free.
And yet, it can be so hard for people to actually label their parents' behavior as abusive, even looking back as adults. Why is that so difficult?
There are a few reasons. There's a very natural, almost primal tendency to want to see our parents in a positive light. We depend on them so completely as kids, it's psychologically safer to believe they mean well, even if their actions are harmful.
Kind of like a survival mechanism.
In a way, yes. Plus, there's recall bias. Our memories aren't perfect video recordings. We might focus on the few good times, or the abuse might have been so subtle and consistent that it just felt normal. It wasn't one big traumatic event, maybe, but 1,000 tiny cuts. So acknowledging the cumulative damage as abuse can feel like a betrayal or just incredibly confusing.
Okay, this has been
Yeah.
it's heavy stuff. And if you're listening and recognizing parts of your own story here, it can bring up a lot. So the big question becomes, what now? What can you actually do? How do you navigate this and start to heal? There has to be a path forward, right?
Absolutely. Healing is possible. It's often a long journey, but there are concrete steps you can take.
And I'm guessing number one on that list is taking care of yourself. Self-care.
It's foundational. It's not just a nice to have, it's non-negotiable. Prioritizing self-care is absolutely essential for managing the ongoing stress and the emotional burnout that often comes with these dynamics.
What does that look like in practice? Bubble baths and
Well, yes, bubble baths can be part of it, but it's broader. It includes the basics: getting enough sleep, moving your body, eating nourishing food, maybe spending time in nature. But just as important, maybe more so, is practicing self-compassion.
being kind to yourself, which sounds simple, but
It's incredibly hard when you've internalized so much criticism. Self-compassion means actively working to replace those harsh, self-critical thoughts with kinder ones. It might mean using gentle physical touch, like putting a hand on your heart when you're feeling distressed, journaling without judging yourself, using positive affirmations, things like, I am enough, I deserve kindness. It's about consciously treating yourself with the care you likely didn't receive.
actively countering that inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the big one, setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
That feels absolutely crucial.
It is. Boundaries are about protecting your emotional safety and reclaiming a sense of control. They define what is okay with you and what is not okay. It's about creating that healthy separation.
How do you actually
yeah.
do that, though, especially with parents you might have a long history of, well, not having boundaries with?
It takes practice and courage. The key is clear, assertive communication. Using I statements is really helpful. Focus on how their behavior makes you feel. So instead of, you're always criticizing me, try, when you criticize my decisions, I feel undermined.
So focusing on your experience.
Exactly. Maintain a calm tone if possible. Be firm. And this is important. State the consequence if the boundary is crossed. For example, if this conversation becomes disrespectful, I'm going to need to end the call, or I won't be able to visit if you continue to bring up X topic.
Consequences. So, okay. But what about the guilt? I imagine setting a boundary with a parent could trigger massive guilt.
Oh, for sure. Guilt is almost guaranteed, especially at first. But try to see that guilt as a sign you're doing something new and healthy. Maybe something that goes against years of conditioning. It's like a growing pain, not proof you're doing something wrong.
That's a helpful reframe. And what if they push back? Which they probably will.
They very likely will. Expect pushback. They might get defensive, try to manipulate you back into the old dynamic, accuse you of being selfish or hurting them. The challenge is to stay firm. Remember why you set the boundary for your own well-being. Their reaction is about them, not about the validity of your need for space or respect.
Okay, stay firm. Got it. So self-care, boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
What else? If your family isn't a source of support, you need it from somewhere else.
Absolutely critical. Building a strong support system outside of the toxic family dynamic is vital. This means cultivating relationships with friends, maybe mentors, chosen family, community leaders, people who offer genuine empathy, validation, and support, people who see your worth.
Your chosen family.
Exactly. And sometimes that informal support isn't enough, or you need more specialized help. That's where seeking professional support comes in. Talking to a therapist, especially one who is trauma-informed or specializes in family dynamics, can be incredibly beneficial.
So finding the right kind of therapist matters.
It really does. They can help you unpack the underlying issues, develop specific coping strategies, process the trauma in a safe space. Online therapy options have made this more accessible too. And it's worth noting, if there's a suspected personality disorder involved with a parent, finding a therapist experienced with that is key, as standard talk therapy might not be as effective.
Good point. Now, there's a really tough question for many people is contact. How much contact should you have? Do you have to cut them off?
That's a deeply personal decision, and there's a spectrum of options. One technique for managing difficult interactions, if you choose to have them, is the gray rock method.
Gray rock, like Be boring.
Essentially, yes. You make yourself as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock. You limit interactions, keep your responses neutral, flat, maybe just factual, minimal emotional reaction, minimal body language, less eye contact. The goal is to not give the manipulative person the emotional reaction they might be seeking or feeding off.
Hmm. Interesting. Sounds draining, though.
It can be very draining, yes. It's generally seen as a short-term coping strategy for unavoidable interactions, not a long-term solution for well-being. If that doesn't work or isn't enough, people might consider low contact or even no contact.
Going low contact or no contact, that sounds huge.
It is huge, and it's often a very difficult decision, but sometimes it's the necessary one for self-preservation. It means significantly reducing interaction or ceasing it entirely. And importantly, this is an act of self-protection, not punishment. You don't actually owe them a lengthy explanation, especially if you know they won't respect your reasons anyway. Sometimes, creating that distance is genuinely the healthiest choice you can make.
Protecting your peace.
Exactly. And alongside these external strategies, there's the vital inner work for self-worth and autonomy. This involves things like practicing self-acceptance, really internalizing that you don't need to be perfect to be worthy, learning to ask for what you need, actively saying kind things to yourself.
More of that self-compassion.
Yes. Tools like setting small, achievable SMART goals can help you reclaim a sense of agency and identity. Doing a personal strength inventory can help fight back against that ingrained self-criticism. Journaling, affirmations, these are all tools to help rewrite those old, damaging narratives.
Look, this whole process, it's a journey. It's profound. And maybe the most crucial thing to remember is that you cannot force someone else to change if they don't want to. Your energy is best spent on what you can control.
Your responses, your choices.
Your responses, your choices, and prioritizing your own health and well-being above all else. And just to reiterate, forgiveness is a personal choice, not an obligation. You never have to forgive if it means compromising your own safety or mental health. That is entirely your call, and it's valid. Hashtag outro. Wow. Okay, that was definitely a deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from defining what toxic parenting actually looks like, to understanding its really deep and lasting effects on adults, and exploring a whole toolkit of strategies, from self-care and boundaries to seeking support and navigating contact.
It's a lot, but hopefully empowering too.
I think so. It's
Yeah.
clear this is complex, right? But hopefully the insights we shared offer some clarity, maybe a path forward if this resonates with you. The key takeaway for me is that sense of agency.
Mhm.
Remember, you absolutely have the right to decide which relationships nourish you and which ones drain you. You are allowed to prioritize your well-being. And you're not responsible for how other people react when you make healthy choices for yourself.
That's so important to hold on to. Your well-being matters most.
It really does. So as we wrap up, here's something to maybe sit with. If you could write the next chapter of your life, completely on your own terms, what old stories maybe about your worth or what relationships have to look like would you choose to leave behind? And what new narratives would you start writing for yourself?